Blog Talk Radio.
Join us for the Wellness Journey, live with Linus of Praiseworks on the Blog Talk Radio Network every Tuesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our program will show you the fun and simplicity of wellness. You can achieve total wellness through holistic practices, nutrition, fitness, and spiritual fulfillment. Join us weekly as we talk to the experts in the field of total wellness for your mind, body, and spirit. Here's Linus.
Hi, this is Linus from Praiseworks, and you are on the Wellness Journey. I'm so glad that you are here today. We are actually broadcasting in May, and I'm not sure when you might be listening to this program, but no matter what time of the year it is, this is a topic that I think we all need to be talking about. Today we're going to be talking about psychiatry, holistic health, and alternative methods of healing instead of always taking the drugs that are prescribed to us by the doctors. Now, I am not anti-AMA, nor am I anti-pharmaceuticals, but I am pro getting information out there for you to find out what's right for you. And there's so much information out there to be shared, and I'm so glad today that we are at the very beginning stages of tackling this whole issue of sharing information around mental health, mental illness, emotional healing, and how holistic lifestyles enter into all of this. In our society today, we have many, many people who are suffering from various forms of emotional and or mental illnesses. And, many times, rather than get to the root of what is causing these issues, doctors have a tendency to prescribe medications, and we go ahead and take them without really knowing what the side effects are and even anything really about long-term use. And the scary thing about long-term use that I've just recently have learned as a result of getting to know my guest, Monica Cassani, is that doesn't mean years and years. Long-term use can be, in some cases for some drugs, only 2 to 4 weeks. Yet, doctors allow patients to take these kinds of drugs for years. So today we're going to be talking with Monica Cassani, who is the creator of a popular blog, very popular. She has over 7,000 followers, Beyond Meds, and she'll be sharing with us her truly remarkable story and her subsequent journey of recovering from protracted psychiatric drug withdrawal. Monica has actually seen the system from both sides, as a social worker and also as a person whose life was severely impacted by psychiatric drugs. It truly is an amazing and inspiring story, and I'm glad that you tuned in today to really learn something about what we all need to know about, and that has to do with mental illness, emotional well-being, and how we have the ability, the power, to make a choice as to how we want to be treated and how we want to be healed. Before we bring Monica on, though, I wanted to let you know that this is our last broadcast for a while during the 1 p.m. slot. We are moving to evenings. Yay! Moving to evenings, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So the next show that you hear live will be at 4 p.m., and our next show is going to be on May 22nd, 2014. You can always listen to our shows in the archives. So no matter what time the show is, if you missed one of our most recent shows, you can always go to the archives. I encourage you to go to the archives. We have some wonderful shows, almost 200 shows now, that we have done on Blog Talk Radio. And I want to thank all of you who have listened, and I want to encourage you to share the show with others. We want to get our listenership up so we can continue to stay on the air. So I would really appreciate it if you let other people know about our show, and also let other people know about our new magazine, Wellness Woman 40 and Beyond. We just got through releasing our newest issue a few days ago, and it's all about detoxification of the mind-body-spirit connection. I'm so excited about the feedback we have gotten from this magazine. Lots of you have read it, and still yet lots more. I want you to read it. If you go on our link on the show page there, just click on Read Wellness Woman. It will take you to all of the issues of our magazine. We have 4 issues that are out so far. Our next one comes out in July. If you want to subscribe, just go to praiseworks.biz and click on the subscription link and subscribe to this fabulous magazine. Just wonderful, wonderful articles. In all, we have had over 50 women who have written for the publication of Wellness Woman 40 and Beyond, and I'm just so happy and so blessed that they have chosen to share their expertise and their knowledge with us. And I'm also happy that Monica Cassani is with us today. Her story is one that I feel can only be appropriately told by her. Ask Monica to share with us.
Hello?
Hi, this is Lennis. I'm sorry, we kind of went off the air for a minute. I was just saying, Monica, that I really wanted you to share your story, and I'm just so excited to have you here on the wellness journey. Tell us a little bit about you and how you came to write the blog Beyond Meds.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's see. I've been doing the blog now for about 7 years. I guess it was 7 years in March. Prior to that, about 3 years prior to that, I was forced to stop working. And I was forced to stop working because basically I was on a drug cocktail that was making me so sick that I couldn't continue working. I was basically a walking zombie, and this is what happens to some significant percentage of people who get into the psychiatric system. Rather than figure out underlying causes or even tease out what's a side effect, drugs are added to mitigate side effects instead of removing the offending drug. So I was on a massive cocktail of drugs, and they were literally making me dysfunctional and sick. And I had to stop working. I had to leave my career. I'd been working as a social worker for close to 15 years at that point, and I was just not well enough to continue working. And I realized that it was the drugs, and it was nothing other than the drugs making me sick. And I started coming off of them. I had that. I met a neuropsych doctor who does neurofeedback, and he introduced me to the idea of discontinuing them, and that it was possible and very likely a good idea. And so I began researching and withdrawing simultaneously. And once the withdrawal started in earnest, I started sharing it. I started writing it on the blog. I had no expectation of where the blog would go, but it ended up becoming my lifeline. It kept me alive when I was very, very ill. The withdrawal led to a debilitating illness to the point where I was bedridden. I couldn't even sit upright, but I continued to write with my laptop propped up on my lap. But I was laying down because if I sat upright, I would get dizzy and nauseous. So I couldn't even sit upright. My hands would be, on the keyboard. Anyway, I wrote through the whole. I just documented that and did tons and tons of research about alternatives, and just got really motivated to help others choose differently so they would never end up as sick as I was. And I've been sick for about a decade, but I'm out of bed. I go to yoga most days. I walk most days. I still can't commit 100% all the time, but I'm slowly. For 2 years I couldn't even sit upright. For about 4.5 years I couldn't leave my house, even for doctor's appointments. Doctors don't even accommodate for severely ill people. It's kind of wild. I was too sick to visit the doctor, and in fact most doctors would have made me sicker because they don't recognize this illness in general. So it's an epidemic. Sorry?
I was going to say, tell us a little bit about that, the protracted psychiatric drug withdrawal. First of all, what is a protracted psychiatric drug, and why does it cause such debilitating symptoms?
No, the protracted psychiatric drug withdrawal syndrome is a description of the illness that is created by potentially pretty much any psych drug. The ones that are most well documented, and it is in the literature. It is in the literature that these things happen, but it's just not widely recognized in the medical community. So the drugs that are most recognized are the SSRI antidepressants and benzodiazepines, that cause this protracted withdrawal syndrome. And even though they have different mechanisms of action in terms of their so-called therapeutic purpose, the injury that happens as a result of taking them are extremely similar, and that's because they strain and stress the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, to the point of complete dysregulation. And sometimes it's looked at as the limbic system as well. And it basically results in a broad and systemic physical and neurological dysfunction. So the entire body, every system, everything is potentially impacted. And it can take on different constellations in different people, depending, I guess, on what their sensitivities are once their autonomic nervous system is not functioning well. I mean, when I was at my worst, I couldn't speak out loud. I had dysarthria. I think I may not be pronouncing that right, but I literally had a neurological condition where I couldn't get words out, and I was nauseous and spinning. I couldn't stand up. I had orthostatic hypotension, so that I literally couldn't stand, and I did become completely bedridden. My muscles atrophied to the point that I couldn't even hold my hand up to brush my teeth. So I was completely disabled and literally unable to leave the house for a very long time. And now the spectrum is quite large, and there are people who get more or less of this, and there are people who come off these drugs and don't have any significant problems as well. And that needs to be underscored. But it's much larger percentage who are getting sick than is recognized. And the thing that's most disturbing is a lot of people who are getting sick when they're on the drugs are being told that they have chronic fatigue, or they have fibromyalgia, or they have some other chronic illness, rather than recognizing that the real exacerbating factor are the drugs. These drugs can cause these problems to begin with, and if you already have them, they can exacerbate them. And these are things we have to know if we're going to make informed choices. And I am not one to ever make a decision for people. I think we're endlessly unique and diverse. But if people don't even know that these are a possibility, they don't recognize that that's what's happening to them. And, in fact, doctors don't even recognize that that's what's happening to them.
Right.
So it's a very dangerous situation, and people really do need to know that these drugs are potentially disabling. There are many people who also perceive them to be life-saving, and that is their genuine experience, and I will not take that from them. But the fact is, there are many people, and we're pretty systematically silenced, or there's an attempt to do that. That's changing big time. I mean, people are coming out with the Internet. There's just so many thousands of us speaking up now. But it's still. Let
me ask you a question, because I'm getting a text from someone here asking, what was it that led you to begin to take these psychiatric drugs in the first place? Why were you prescribed these drugs in the first place?
Okay, that's an important question. I was in college, and I took a hallucinogenic drug, a recreational hallucinogenic drug, and I opened up a little bit too much. And, I mean, at this point, I see it more like I was definitely not well at that point in time, and I was shut down, and that was how they took care of me. And then they told me I needed drugs for the rest of my life, rather than presenting me with ways to calm my system naturally and be with people who might understand the experiences I was having. Because even though it was triggered by a hallucinogenic drug, it was actually a very big spiritual experience. And it was also, I also had trauma in my background. The hallucinogenic drug triggered like a huge, what could have been a huge healing crisis, actually, because what happened was, it put me in touch with a lot of pain, and all the very traumatic experiences from my childhood kind of came up. And rather than being, appropriately dealt with and faced and healed, I was just shut down with drug after drug after drug, and every time something started changing, they'd give me another drug, and I ended up on 6 different drugs. And so there was no chance ever to heal from all that, all those insults, multiple insults. So that's how it happened. It was just kind of like a domino effect, and no one ever stopped to think about why did I lose it when I took the hallucinogenic. It wasn't just the hallucinogenic. It was because I had trauma and other things in my background that needed to be faced.
Right.
And also
you were trying
drugs,
to go through that process at the time.
Yes, it was a misguided attempt to seek my own care, because a hallucinogen isn't an escape in the same way that drugs that dull the senses are. It actually puts you right into it in a big way. I don't recommend it, but it wasn't. It wasn't that I was actually trying to answer questions in a misguided way.
Right. Now, your blog talks a lot about holistic healing. How does this translate into mental and emotional illness, as well as other brain injuries that are caused by psychiatric drugs?
First of all, as holistic beings, holistic medicine looks at everything, and I have a little meme that I talk about, everything matters. And so everything in our environment, everything in our experience, everything in our biology, everything we put in our mouths, our food, how we move our bodies, everything matters, and everything impacts both our mental and physical health. So on some level, the mental and physical aren't completely you can't completely separate them. But then when you're talking about the iatrogenic injury, the injury from the drugs versus what someone presents with when they are given drugs, certainly the iatrogenic injury everything becomes much, much bigger and more ingrained and difficult to treat. So the whole idea is, with a holistic approach from the beginning, to save people from getting compounded issues from the drugs. And it's not to say that there aren't times when drugs are appropriate, especially in crisis situations when there's no infrastructure of care for alternatives. And sadly, that's largely the problem society-wide right now. And that is what fuels me to advocate for change, because essentially, in many circumstances, many areas of the country, and especially if people don't have financial resources for other options, drugs are the only thing offered many, many desperate and vulnerable people, and they truly don't have an option that they can see or understand. And what's worse, a lot of the people, handing out the medications, honestly are not aware that there are many, many wonderful, deeply healing options. But since they're not available, and because there is no infrastructure of care that helps, and that's the other thing. If a practitioner is aware of options and they really want to help people with options, if there's not an infrastructure of care to help meet someone in a drastically difficult crises, then they too are at a loss. And the fact is, it takes a village. We need a lot of people on board to give people the support they need when they're desperately hurting or in crisis of any kind. And we don't have that. And so that's the biggest reason I would never say absolutely no drugs, because when that's all there is in a crisis. Now, I hope we see a day when drugs are a rarity, absolutely. But right now, because we simply don't have people who understand and who are skilled enough and no infrastructure of care to help support those who might otherwise be able to do those things, it's a serious situation. It's a tragic situation. We're harming a lot of people.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to get the word out and to raise awareness. When you decided to opt to do something else, to get healed, what was your first step? What was it that you did from a holistic standpoint that was different than what you were doing before?
Okay, the very first thing, I was just doing research, anything I could get my hands on. And early on, I guess I was actually interacting with other people who had helped themselves heal from these issues. And so the first thing that I was drawn to was healing my gut, because something I started noticing was a lot of people that have been on psychiatric meds either before or once they'd started psychiatric meds, developed irritable bowel syndrome. And that was my first clue that, I had irritable bowel syndrome for over 2 decades, and I'd had chronic diarrhea and all sorts of just really uncomfortable and painful and inconvenient too symptoms. And I guess I don't know. I don't know if it was the drugs, whatever. I never thought much about it. It was just something I lived with and I dealt with. Anyway, I realized I had to heal that, and so that was the first thing I did. I started healing my gut, and and that cleared up. I cleared up my irritable bowel syndrome within a year, within the first year, while I was still taking the drugs. And I'm really grateful I did that, because I think I would have even been worse had I not managed to do that. I healed it in terms of no more diarrhea, no more outward symptoms of IBS. Although later I realized I still had a lot of issues with, leaky gut, and I continue to heal that. Although I've gotten to a place where it's not as critical as it certainly once was.
So
anyway, that was the first.
That was the first step. What did you do? I'm sorry. What did you do? I know there's a lot of women that have IBS because it is part of our immune system breaking down. What did you do to lessen the symptoms of IBS?
Well, this is what I did, and I don't think it works for everybody. And as I said, after I got rid of the initial, the diarrhea and the erratic bowel movements, I still had a lot of other health problems. But I started taking probiotics, and I changed my diet. I basically took a course of very high-dose probiotics, and I started very, very low and titrated up very slowly. And I did that for an entire year on a high dose, and then I went way, way down. And I don't take probiotics anymore. But that completely got my bowel movements normal again. And but I also stopped eating grains largely. That was more of an evolution, and I a lot of my dietary changes kind of happened in bits and pieces, but I haven't been eating grains now for no gluten, absolutely, for several years. And every once in a blue moon, I might eat a little buckwheat or something. But basically, I'm grain-free, largely grain-free, and certainly never do I eat gluten. And in fact, I have been tested most likely to have some sort of celiac. I mean, I have the celiac genes. That doesn't guarantee that you actually have celiac, but it's highly probable.
Okay, and you had mentioned when I had interrupted you, I wanted to make sure I was understanding some of the things that you did for the IBS, but you had mentioned that you went to another step after you addressed your IBS and made some dietary changes. What else did you do in addition? Well,
I mean, we're talking many years, and I was getting sicker and sicker, and I couldn't do a lot except hang on for a long time. But I continually, my diet was continually changing as I learned more and more about my body. But really, until I got off all the drugs, I wasn't in a condition to really attentively hear my body because the drugs and the severe illness was impacting me. Now, in the last 2 years, that has been changing dramatically. I've been off all medications for 4 years, but so the first couple years was just getting back on my feet, literally, out of bed, walking again, the whole bit. But since then, I've been able to become more and more attuned to what my body actually needs, and so my diet continues to be tweaked and improve. And in some ways, it's been limiting, but in other ways, it's been freeing because a lot of the healing process when you're eliminating foods, and I have if I haven't said this, I have hypersensitivities to a lot of different foods. But as I'm healing now, I'm seeing that those are going to largely fall away because once your gut heals, you can actually add back some of the foods that you aren't tolerating. Now, things like gluten, which I have, the celiac gene for, probably will never be added back in, and I don't have any worries about that. But a lot of things that would otherwise be healthy foods that I can't eat, and there are quite a few of those will slowly be able to, at least a large number, and But and one of the things, I have psoriatic arthritis that flared as a result too, and so I don't eat nightshades. Nightshades aren't good for anybody with rheumatoid arthritis or arthritis of any kind, and so those probably are something I won't eat a whole lot of ever again. I might be able to have a very occasional tomato or something, but but to get healthy, I had to do several different, or to work on getting healthy. I'm still getting there. I've had to do several different elimination diets and learn. And yeah, it's been really interesting, and it's very hard to convey if someone hasn't gone through it themselves what's involved. But slowly over time, and you have to be patient, and you have to take it just literally one day at a time. And at some points, it was one moment at a time. Learning to pay attention, and paying attention is really important. Just paying attention to your body, keeping track of what you eat and when you eat it, and you just eventually things start coming together, and you start recognizing patterns, and you feel better when you finally do eliminate the dairy or the gluten or the whatever. It's like, wow, that really made a difference, and things just start coming together.
So
and now,
that is so true. I was saying that is so true. I think it's very important that we learn to listen to our bodies. Our bodies really are our best indicator of what's really going on. I have a friend right now who's going through an experiment with her diet because something's not right, and she knows that something's not right. So she's kind of starting from scratch and just starting with fruits and vegetables and beginning to, and well, she started actually, she was a meat eater and everything else, so she began to take away different things over time. And now she's zeroed in on probably about 4 or 5 things that she knows that she should not do. But she did this by listening and being in tune with her body. And I think so many times we ignore certain things that are going on with our bodies and say, oh, well, that's just a little ache or pain or something, and we kind of rationalize it because it's not convenient to stop and figure out what's going on with our bodies. So I think what you did is just really amazing. And I wanted to ask you, where does movement come into all of this? Because I know you do yoga. Why is yoga for you and what you've gone through, why has that been an important part of your making changes in your life so that you don't have to subsist on the drugs any longer?
Well, I'm glad you asked about that, because basically listening to the body isn't just about listening to what you put in your food, in your body in terms of food, but it's also literally yoga. When you're stretching, it's almost like, well, it supports the nervous system, first of all, and exactly how that – I mean, there is science. The science in the literature is being developed, and it actually supports and helps heal the autonomic nervous system, which is exactly what's being injured with these drugs, and it helps soothe it. But you also have to be careful. You can overdo it and cause problems. Everything's – boy, do I learn moderation with this. But also, it's almost like the body – well, the body does hold trauma, and everything that has ever happened to you, the body holds. Your body, when you're sad or happy, your body feels it. There's a physiological response, and so when there's a trauma, there's also a physiological response. And a lot of times, because we're not, especially if we're children and we're being, abused, or if we're, women who there's rape, whatever, all these, and in a war zone, whatever, there's not a chance to process, and so the body kind of takes it in and holds those things, because we don't know how to process them, and we don't have a culture that supports processing that kind of extreme pain. So the body's holding all this stuff, and movement, in part, I mean, it does a lot of other things as well. But for me, and how it works to heal all these insults, what makes it so special to me is that the movement actually allows me to process these things in a deeply psychological and spiritual way. The body and the spirit are not separate. And the body actually, it almost gives, it gives you information and data that you can work with. And, it's not with words, and so it's hard to talk about, again, if people don't have these experiences for themselves. But it's phenomenal to me, and I'm in awe every day of how much I can learn by just, again, paying attention to my body, when I'm moving, when I'm doing yoga, I also dance. I do a lot of ecstatic dancing, and the ecstatic dancing. Well, the style that I do is something Gabrielle Roth developed. She died a couple years ago, I guess now, but it's called 5 Rhythms. You can Google that, and I've also put a lot on my blog about that. But when you're ecstatically, this is how it works for me, and I'm just talking off the top of my head because I've never really, and I don't even know how people in 5 Rhythms talk about it, so I may not be representing them. But in my experience, when I dance ecstatically, all sorts of stuff is going on in my body, and there's a lot of release. You can laugh and cry when you're dancing, and people do. And we have a local dance, and everybody, it's amazing. And you're not allowed to talk, so it's completely a physical thing. But what my experience after these ecstatic moments is, like, I'll do that on a Sunday morning, and the rest of the week it's like there's a kind of settling of what happened during the ecstatic dance. So it's kind of like it stays with you, and it helps inform you the rest of the week. I can't explain it, but I was actually talking to my mother the other day, and I said, we lost something when we stopped dancing with the tribe, because it is medicine. It is medicine to dance.
Well, you're talking to a dancer. I've danced since I was 4 years old. I was, classically trained in ballet, but when I got to college, I explored other forms of dance. And I know enough about myself that I am not totally whole as a person if I'm not dancing. Not just movement, because there's been times where I've had to just do exercising and stuff because I didn't have the time, especially since I started this business. I didn't have the time to dance as much as I wanted to. But this year, and I'm going into my 57th year, I have committed to myself that I'm definitely going to get back to what I do, praise dancing, because it nurtures my soul. And just the other day, I told the church I'm going to be performing or ministering in dance this Sunday, because it is an essential part of my health and well-being. And definitely, preaching to the choir when you talk about the mind-body-spirit connection. You really cannot do one without the other. There is a symbiotic relationship. And if anything is off in any of that continuum, then we're not well. There's something that's missing. And for me personally, because I just know my body, listening to my body, I finally learned how to listen to my body at the age of 51. But learning to listen to my body, yeah, that's right. I realized that I needed to have as part of my regime, dance movement as part of my regime. You mentioned earlier that's right, and you mentioned earlier that you're doing better, and I love your blog. I have to tell people, you have to go to Monica's blog. It's first of all, it's an amazing testimony of discipline and what you can do for yourselves when you make up your mind that you have to make a change. You decided that you wanted to make a change in your life, and you did it through writing about it, and as a result helping thousands and thousands of people. So what's next for you? What are you planning on doing now that you're beginning to get better? I know you have good results just the other day and testing results around your thyroid. So what's next for you?
Oh, well, that's a good question. One of the things that I sometimes talk about the luxury of having been this sick, because it's allowed me to have so much time to meditate and to learn about the nature of reality. And one thing that it's allowed me to come to is to deeply trust life and to deeply trust the healing process. And at this point, the healing process is becoming exciting in that I'm watching my life unfold in front of me as I get better and healthier. And I don't know exactly. I don't actually make plans. I watch life unfold, and so it's hard for me to answer that question. I want to serve. I want to keep serving other people that have been harmed, and however that is presented to me, I'll do it. Whatever makes sense. And when and one of the things I've learned is how to be in a kind of a flow with nature, and so I just respond to what feels like the right flow, and things are happening. And I'm talking to you now, and
yes.
I really do want to talk to people. I like the idea. I have a friend who teaches or uses my blog in her classroom. on mental health, and at some point I hope to go speak to her classroom. I've been invited to do that. So, right now it's still baby steps, but
right.
Yeah, however I'm called to serve, that's what I want to do.
Well, Monica, I want to thank you so much for sharing these moments with us. I think it's so important, and I do believe that someone's going to hear this broadcast, and they're going to have an aha moment. They're going to go to your blog and begin to realize that they can make a difference in their own lives. Sometimes we just need to be encouraged to show up in our own lives. We show up everywhere else, but we don't show up within our own lives. And that's what you've done, and I think you've encouraged others to do the same thing. And for those of you who are on the site right now, on the show page, you can connect directly to Monica's Beyond Meds. Just click on the Beyond Meds, and that will take you directly to her blog. And I think you do an insert almost every day, Monica. Is that true?
Most days, yes, and sometimes 2 or 3. I mean, some of it's just kind of, edit just a collection of inspiring stuff from all over the place, and then I also once or twice a week generally write something longer that's more original.
Well, it's a wonderful blog. I was reading it quite a bit this morning in preparation for the show, and I just cannot tell you what a difference I know that you are making in your lives. And I just want to say thank you so much for just being there and bringing this awareness to people on another way that they can be well in their mind, in their body, and their spirit. Thank you so much for being on the Wellness Journey today.
Liz, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Wow, isn't that amazing? I want to encourage everybody to go to her blog. I was brought to tears by some of the things that she wrote. She writes with such clarity, such honesty, and yet instill a sense of humor where anyone can read it. And there's healing words in her blog. So I encourage you to go to Beyond Meds and click on the link there that says Beyond Meds and check out what Monica has to say. Or you can Google Beyond Meds if you happen to be listening and not on the show page, because there is something there, I believe, for everyone, whether you've gone through being severely ruptured by psychiatric drugs, or whether you know someone else who has done that, or just in general about staying emotionally and mentally healthy and listening to our bodies and using holistic means within which to do so. It's a huge issue, and she has shed a bright light on it, and I'm so glad that she's been on the show with us today. For those of you who might be tuning in late, I'm excited to tell you that we do have an archive. You can go to the on-demand section and listen to Monica's wisdom and the things that she shared with us on the Wellness Journey today. Remember that our next show is going to be on May 22nd. We will have with us Diane Collins, the author of Quantum Thinking. She's going to be with us on May 22nd, and our show will be starting at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be on in the evenings. I want you to tell a friend and join in on the Wellness Journey. We're very excited about the growth of the Wellness Journey, and we're very excited to be able to come to you on the evenings. Don't forget to listen to our archives. And remember that along the journey, there's going to be all kinds of issues that come into play. And as Monica talked about, there are different things that you can try as long as you stay in tune to your body, listen to that inner voice, and continue the journey, picking up the tools, tips, and techniques that you'll need to heal your mind, body, spirit connection. This is Lennis from PraiseWorks, and you have been on the Wellness Journey. We'll see you again next time.
Thank you for joining us on the Wellness Journey Live with Lennis of PraiseWorks here on the Blog Talk Radio Network. We hope that you have enjoyed our show and look forward to the opportunity to share with you weekly every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time information that will help you along your journey to total wellness for the mind, body, and spirit.